This presentation will explore anxiety and reference interactions by drawing from my observation experiences, articles, film, literature, and more. My observation site was a large academic library in suburban California, which services primarily students, faculty, and visiting researchers. The library also grants access to the community at large through a limited number of yearly visits. The library loans to and borrows from institutions around the world. These requests are handled by the reference librarians at the reference desk. The site is also a federal depository library and ensures that the American public has access to government information. The desk is staffed by librarians who take turns, usually in shifts that last 1 to 3 hours at a time. Communication is key to reference librarianship. All the librarians I interacted with were eager to communicate and volunteer their stories and experiences. Effective communication seems to be a sort of middle ground that the librarian must master in order to reach a user's information need. I found myself asking, how do technologies and the diversity of library users find or complicate the process of finding effective reference service? What happens when lines of communication break down? A recent book describes reference librarianship as a sort of trench warfare. I was excited by this World War I metaphor and thought of ways to extend it. Communication is not always easy because users come in with several, oftentimes unexpected concerns or questions. I thought this was similar to shell shock, which is now known as PTSD, and while librarians don't suffer psychological trauma on the same level, several unexpected, sometimes unpleasant interactions have certainly left permanent impressions on this staff. Extending the metaphor, we can liken budget cuts to the Spanish flu. Budget cuts on my observation site had done away with weekend reference hours as well as several positions. So budget cuts are like an epidemic that are decimating library staff. I looked for reference services as they are depicted in popular culture and found several, which is in a book on human called Paper Cadavers, and in it documents the recovery of the archives of the National Police of Guatemala, and the police archivist referred to the archive as El Basurero, and it was a place where people were banished to. The chief police archivist mentioned that finding information in this archive was a practical fiction because of its state of disorganization. There's a parallel here to the library where I observed a government librarian was searching for tapes because she was trying to figure out if a collection of acetate discs she had was redundant. She could get rid of this outdated format if so, but if not, she had to hold on to them because they were the only copies left. And so this kind of disorganization inhibited government reference services, the ability to consult documents and information resources related to world government. And so though the contents of the academic library do not look like the contents of the Guatemalan archive in 2005, they are closer to it than many will readily admit. Black Orpheus provides a metaphor for the abundance of information. A reference interview has the reference clerk at an archive tell Orfeo, the protagonist, that he will not find people and papers. On the contrary, that is where they get lost. And similarly, the library catalog at my site allows users to virtually browse a shelf of books, and so this leads users to believe that all the materials in the library are in order under one roof, but this is not true. A lot of materials, as soon as they come in, are sent right off to the storage facilities, which are several miles away and take several days to access. And so again, this is a reference inhibitor and a source of stress and anxiety for both the user and the reference library. There's a example in Franz Kafka's parables, namely one called An Imperial Message, in which a messenger has to deliver a message to someone in the countryside. He has to move through the capital, but there are so many people in the capital that he can't get through, and it's just this never-ending process of getting through to the next space. In the library where I observed, there was a story of a philosophy professor who only recently learned about 39 unique and relevant databases accessible through the library, and he goes on to share this with the rest of the department as though it were this great brand new discovery. And the parallel here is that each database contains a multitude of search possibilities. Each search possibility contains a multitude of results, and each page of those results has several articles, and each article will take a lot of time to really fully take in. And so this is kind of a never-ending, self-perpetuating task where even linking someone with relevant information can only lead to kind of more searching. This process of searching and arriving to relevant information is sort of never-ending. And so what kinds of conclusions can we draw about libraries? The first is that libraries are volatile. They're subject to change. They're dynamic. They're not organized. While I was there, the reference department was reorganized and the library catalog was updated. Reference interactions are prone to breaking down. The reference interview is full of tension and release. The librarian sometimes is approached by a user who has an incomplete picture of what they're looking for, and so the reference librarian has to anticipate this. And information overload is particularly taxing on the reference librarian, who now has to deal with questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through virtual reference, and this is a source of anxiety. But reference librarians are not dissuaded by their condition as mediators between information and users. In fact, they derive pleasure and joy from this process of navigating reference interactions. The reference director mentioned that that is part of why he enjoyed his job so much, because he never knew who was going to approach the desk next and with what question. Here are some suggestions for further viewing and reading, and thank you very much.